Hello. So I'm Alex from Arise. I'm the CTO. I'm about to describe a technology that we use to build distribution infrastructure. Disclaimer first. This is a very abstract topic, right? This is something that's hard to visualize, hard to understand how it fits in. My goal is to give you one concrete example of how this can apply and how it does apply today to distribution in hospitality. But first, a recap of the problem we're actually trying to solve. So a database, right? A database is just an organized collection of data. It's electronically accessible. These are in our phones, these are in our cars, but they're also in hotel reservation systems, right? So here's an example of a database that contains hotel inventory. Pretty straightforward. Room, rate code, a price, how many rooms are available. It's got a defined structure. It's especially important. The big question, and the question we're all here to talk about, is how does this data get to partners that need this information to provide services to us or to other travelers in the industry? So that's the problem we're trying to solve. The simplest scenario that has probably never been done, but if you take this back to basics, the simplest way this could work is that every partner queries that hotel database directly. They get real-time data back. It's great, right? Everybody's in sync. Everything works. However, there are some problems with this scenario. The first is latency and response time. So if there's someone in Australia querying a database in North America, it takes a long time for that request to come back with data. Also, that partner is entirely dependent upon the response time of that hotel system. So if they're serving results back to someone searching for travel, their product, the impression of their product, is dependent upon someone else's system. Number two, dependency, right? So like I already kind of said, this partner is dependent upon that hotel's infrastructure. They've given up control to kind of provide the service they have. Also reliability. If that database goes down, there's a problem. There's no response. It's not a good look. And finally, scalability, right? If you think through this, as you scale this up, there could be dozens of partners all querying that database at the same time, and it's unlikely it would be able to sustain the global query load. So how have we been solving this problem? And this is a problem and a solution that many of you already know. Everyone creates their own database, right? We all, for our products, have created our own database locally on our own infrastructure with our own schema, own fields. Oftentimes, the data format is completely different than the hotel's original database. So we have something like this, right? Different codes, different price structure, things like that. That's kind of where we're at today. And we synchronize these two databases together with APIs, exports, all the things we've talked about, right? Integrations to APIs, constantly trying to keep this data in sync. This is what we've been doing for probably 30 years. And at some level, it does work, right? I can make a booking. I can show up at a hotel. My information's there. I can go to my room. My name is on the television. It's great, right? It works. But it's not optimal. So it solves some of the issues, right? Response time, dependability, scalability, but it creates other problems. There are multiple data structures in this industry, right? There are standards. We're here to talk about standards, but in reality, with the way those standards are implemented can be completely different. Data fragmentation. Not all systems have the same information. So reconciling reservations, getting information about travelers. Sometimes you have to go to multiple systems and you may not have a complete picture of what actually happened on site. And finally, inconsistent capabilities, right? If one partner supports something that someone that, another service they get their information from doesn't have the same capabilities, that's something they can't move forward with. And we see this with a lot of intermediaries, right? The hotel may want to sell their rooms in a new way. Someone they work with doesn't support it, so that rate or pricing strategy is unable to make it out to the point of sale. So there are also some things that are, right, those are the problems. There's also some things that are difficult about this strategy. Number one is cache and validation, right? When do we refresh the information in our own local databases? Integration management is a huge resource suck in this industry, right? We have teams of people trying to just keep these integrations live and keep them in sync. Extremely slow upgrades also. Like I kind of talked about with the capabilities, if someone does want to move something forward, they need to coordinate with all their partners, everyone in the chain, to upgrade and make this change before it can actually be used in the real world. But probably the biggest thing is that so many different partners are burning resources, essentially building the same integration, just slightly different, right? Thousands of us. There are engineering teams that we all have that are just dedicated to kind of making changes, maintenance, and building the same piece of connectivity. So this problem has been solved inside our own organizations, right? We're companies. We have more control over our infrastructure. And we use database replication to make this happen. So probably almost everyone in the room has gotten data from a database that uses this strategy. And all it means is that you take a database, you make a copy of it, you put it somewhere else, and those two copies synchronize. That's the idea. The data structure is the same, even though they're in different geographic locations. So what you end up with is a globally, we say, distributed database, something like this, where that data has moved closer to the place where it's going to be used. The load is distributed around the world, but we have the same schema, same data format. So the problem with this model is that existing distributed databases are designed to be controlled by one organization. So right now, the databases we use to do this have a single point of control, single admin access, everything that basically gives one party complete control over how this works. But it's also not an optimal solution if we were going to use this as an industry, right? If we were going to use one distributed database as an industry, there are some questions. So who controls the database? If it's your competitor, it's a non-starter. If it's a third party, do you trust that third party? If it's HEDNA, a neutral industry organization, do you pay them? What's the deal? How does it all work, right? Ultimately, no one wants to build a business on top of infrastructure they don't control. Like, it's a bad start. So we need the best of both worlds. We need a way to standardize and replicate data, right, like a distributed database, but we also need a way to give everyone control of their own infrastructure, like we have today with our own API connected system. So what we at Arise do is we build infrastructure on top of distributed or decentralized databases, right? And the idea is that you have the same schema, the same data, everything stays in sync, you have geographically distributed copies of this database, but the control of the actual databases on the end are within each individual organization themselves. They're not reliant on someone else for access, for their infrastructure maintenance, anything like that. So this is the real-world example of how this works today with what we built. It's pretty basic. It can do a lot more, but this is just the most streamlined example we've got. So imagine that a hotel, right? They spin up a database. It could be done by their own IT team. It could be done by a service provider, a company in this room, or it could be done by a specialized company who just focuses on this stuff. And the key piece is the decision they make now isn't forever. It's easy to move data between different types of parties once it's created. So there's no lock-in. So it has a defined structure, right? Name, code, image, partner ID. Pretty straightforward. This structure says that the hotel can add content through the first three fields. So they fill in what they have. So there's a name, code, image URL, stuff like that. A third party, a partner, needs access to that data. They send a request with a verified identity saying, hey, can I get access to your data in this database? The hotel agrees, and that information is sent back, and now the two databases are linked. So what we have, the partner has a local copy of that information that the hotel allowed them to have access to within a database that runs on their infrastructure. So cool, that's great. Now, the structure is defined to accept information from the partner also, right? This is two ways. It's not just the hotel adding information, but it also allows the partner to add information. So the partner pushes in their own ID for this room type. So what we have is a complete set of data in one database that's been contributed by two different parties, right? A complete picture. So imagine a third partner wants to get involved. So a third partner requests access, same scenario, comes with a verified identity, the hotel approves, and that partner gains access to both pieces of data that were contributed by the other two. So they get a complete data set with nothing. They didn't have to do two integrations. They didn't have to do anything. It's there. It's available. So now we have a database that is shared by three organizations with complete information. So far, so good. Now, what if we want to change the structure, right? And this is a common issue in standards, right? Let's say we want to change the standard that we've all agreed upon. Today, that can take a lot of time. The documentation may be updated, but in reality, it takes years for everybody to do their own implementation of this standard. But in this case, we have one partner, so this could be HEDNA, for example, that proposes a change to this database structure. That proposal is sent out to other partners. If they accept, the change is committed, and they all get that new piece of information with the new structure of the database. So this is like It's like you write a standard, and at the same time, you distribute the code or the logic to support that standard in a package. So it's almost like, it's not just saying, let's do this. It's like, here's the means to do this in the infrastructure you already run. So that's hopefully one big change that this can bring to the industry, is the ability to make upgrades faster in unison without multi-year delays. We're all tight on resources, right? It's hard to get things scheduled. So the big question is, what if one partner leaves? What if someone doesn't want to continue to be involved in this? Even the hotel, right? The hotel was the party that originally started this. The hotel separates from the network. They no longer update the fields that they originally were, but the two other partners can continue to use the database as they were before. Nothing's changed. No access has been cut off. If they want to change the structure and take over updating the information in the name, code, and image fields, that's fine. They can decide to do that. But the key piece is that the infrastructure of the two partners who rely on this were not impacted by a third party discontinuing use. So this is an example with static content, right, that I gave. It goes well beyond static content. Like at Arise, we've built the equivalent of an entire, it's CRS, right, central reservation system, but an entire distributed reservation system on top of this technology. So rates, reservations, real-time availability, all of that is possible without the need to actually build and maintain these integrations that we do today. So what impact can this technology have? And one of the bigger impacts is that in some ways, it decouples the data from the service provider, right? So if you're a hotel or another partner and you pay a service provider for some service, normally the data that's specific to that service exists in their local database. It can be hard to migrate off these services, right? The switching cost is very high. If you're a hotel and you're changing a PMS, it can take years to make that happen. By decoupling these two things a little bit, it reduces the switching costs for hotels or for other partners to try new things out. You can just try out a new product. The data is available for them to pull down. You can see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, try something else. You can actually run multiple services in parallel to try things out. And the whole point is that we need to reduce the fear or the struggle of trying to implement new things, because today there is a lot of risk, right? There's integration risk, there's data privacy risk, there's all kinds of different stuff that it takes to get things up. So hopefully this will streamline some of that. The other thing which we talked about was more structured upgrades and changes. Not just providing a new standard, but also providing the actual structure and everything with that as a package, so implementation hopefully goes to almost zero for new teams to implement that change. And the third thing is that this could actually reduce the overhead, and in some ways this is a threat, right? To certain partners, this is a threat, but it reduces the overhead for new services to get started. Right now there are so many new companies in this space that come in very optimistically, but within the first year, they realize that it's not just about providing a good service. The real struggle is to get access to the data and get the integrations in place, right? If I'm connecting to a new CRS, I may be put in a queue that's 18 months away. My company's going to die. There's no way I can get funding to survive that gap until I can actually show that this works. So this is the hope behind this technology. And hopefully this toes into, I think, the next talk also around innovation, but that's the idea. So hopefully this was clear. The concept of decentralization, while it sounds very abstract, is just like no one party controls it. It's distributed across multiple parties. Everyone still has control of their core infrastructure. Thank you.